Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the show. So today we're going to be looking at some Supreme Commander Total Annihilation games played between Grimplex as well as Tagrock. So getting into introducing our players, on the right side of the screen we have Tagrock playing as the Arm, which is one of the Total Annihilation factions, opening for first Kabat Lab, and then looks like going for a couple of solar generators. His opponent on the other side of the map is Grimplex, going by Nightmare, actually this game, going UEF and opening first land. Also joined in this video, I am joined by Felix, or Se7en, as you guys might know him, as well as Dragun, who is one of the admins and developers for the SCTA mod. Guys, would you like to say hello?
Hello,
everybody. Yeah, I'm excited to be here with you, and hopefully we can cast some great games today between Tagrock and multiple opponents.
Yes. I'm Dragun. I once again am the current maintainer of this mod. It's actually two mods: SCTA Fix, which is the base game, the original mod, created by Raven, that I have bug fixed. Then SCTA Balance is my mod, which takes the TA factions and makes them viable in a fair and fair gameplay perspective with the Supreme Commander factions. And
yeah, so within this game, we have a lot of work has been put in from Dragun and other people in this mod to make sure that ARM and core factions are well balanced with the UEF, the Se7en, Se7en, etc. factions. Just makes it a little bit more well-rounded and is a huge homage to Supreme Commander's dad, so to speak, Total Annihilation.
I will want to stress something here. Duelist is, I do not call it balanced, because this gets into a very weird pandemic discussion, but it is somewhat my belief you cannot balance the TA factions with the subcom factions. They are just intrinsically too different, which is why I always say my goal is fair and good gameplay, not necessarily balanced gameplay. For sake of example, if you look at one of the TA engineers for me, you will notice there's two different kinds of P-gens: the wind and the solar. Now, if you look at the cost of the solar, it's 120 mass, 450 energy. Very expensive energy. Gives the same output for, the regular subcom P-gen, at 450 HP. Now, if you look at the wind generator, it averages 25 energy, but generate and costs 45 mass and just a bit more energy than a subcom P-gen does, and only has about 200 HP. The wind generator, ultimately speaking, is strictly better than a subcom P-gen. It's cheaper, it's more energy efficient. Its only downside, it has less HP, so it gets one pass by basically every bomber. That's not balanced, but it's fair because it has several drawbacks associated with it, as well as TAs having certain economic advantages, such as they don't have a Jathan fee.
Yeah, and as I experienced in my show matches versus Spiky Noob, which I think you guys should have watched a few days back, the wind generator does fluctuate a good amount, and I think I actually called that out in my replay review, where sometimes it'll be putting out 30 energy per tick, other times it'll be like down to as low as I think even 15.
Yes, and I mean, if we look at the SCTA faction, they have a way quicker start at the early game usually, that if you have a great build order or economic management, you can use to get an early advantage usually to the subcom faction.
Yeah, that's a great call out. So looking at the metal extractors for the TA factions versus the subcom extractors, as well as the unit costs, it makes it a little bit more efficient on the TA factions to, I think, get more units into the field a little bit faster. But you do have that restriction of having to build, 12 T1 factories, correct me if I'm wrong, to actually get to T2, right?
Yeah, the process of teching up is, technically, if you really wanted to, you could upgrade your factories if you really wanted to. You shouldn't do that. Because the TA factories are just more expensive base. So, but yeah, so the way you're intended to do it, you need to build those 12 T1 factories. And that gives you access to it is T2 on your engineers. Now, this is actually idea 7. You remember about a year ago, you one of the people who helped you playtest this mod in that 2v2 tournament you did.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that you noted there on how going T2 in that case was just actively bad.
Yes, the
Actually,
mod has
but
been going through a lot of maintenance and changes, and I like the change that you did by putting up that requirement when you have enough factories that you basically almost, I would say, ascend a tech tier, right?
Yeah.
Because it keeps it keeps a little bit more true to the basic concept of TA in that sense, but also makes it, I would say, even better and more streamlined, especially with the balance changes for TA for the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if we take a look at the game for a moment and kind of take a look how it looks like, a big advantage also for the SCTA faction in this game is that the commander or the command unit, they can actually walk over most of the hills, especially on this map here, so this major. I don't know if you paid attention at the beginning of the game, but the commander just went straight up where he built those additional 4 factories that we see at the moment, and then he walked right to the 3-max expansion. As the Supreme Commander player, you actually have to walk all the way around, which will make your progress in expansion way slower, and that can result into an advantage.
Or do funny edge build memes.
Or do funny edge build memes.
Yeah,
Yes.
but even with edge building, like you still have to get the factory down, produce engineers, and then the engineers build additional factories. With the arm, kind of as we saw at the very beginning of the game, the dude just like scales the cliff, drops factories, goes for the 3-max expansion, and now is kind of pressuring this additional 4-max expansion here for Grimplex, along with Warrior Infantry Kabot.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's especially powerful. A thing that I saw in the early game was that Tagrock actually hasn't utilized the strengths of ARM or of this SCTA faction because he built way too much power in the beginning and was stalling mass for a while, which actually slowed him down. That's why we're seeing currently that mass imbalance, as well as the lacking of taking reclaim. So, but he does so much pressure on the top that this probably swings the other way soon.
Yeah, the Grimplex, though, doing a really good job with this little T1 sortie, taking out, kind of trading blows for blows with Tagrock and taking out and putting some pressure on Tagrock's 4-max expansion down in the south as well. Just at the same time as Tagrock is basically walked his commander down a cliff and is doing the exact same in the northern side of the map.
The only thing that we want to keep in mind here is that, you know, as in every single Supreme Commander game, which is not different to kind of those hybrid games, right, where you play Subcom and TA, is that if you don't do enough damage with your push and leave reclaim of about 10 to 15 tanks on the enemy side, right, just to kill a few tanks and 2 max extractors, is that really worth it? You always have to be careful that you know, because he's basically suiciding the tanks where he currently puts them, right?
Yep.
That is
So as
definitely
an
a
aside
good point.
side statement here, just so you guys know, for those who don't know, Tagrock was a player from GPG Net era, FA, and he's basically left the community more or less since then. To quote himself, the last real time he played this game was like in 010. Except when he does these show matches for me.
Yes,
So-
but, I mean, he's still showing a good spirit, right? He knows
Yeah.
the basic. You told me that he's one of the best TA players at the moment still.
Yeah.
So he definitely knows the genre, although
Yeah.
the games are different to the most degree. But yeah, he's giving his best effort, but we kind of see how the map develops, that Nightmare is definitely getting ahead, and now basically has assumed map control on a large-scale basis. We see here that TechRock utilized the feature of 12 T1 land factories in order to do the transition to T2.
He did
if
not,
I'm-
actually. I got very angry at him for this.
2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. Oh yeah,
He's 11.
he actually traditionally tagged.
Yes, I got very angry at him for this.
He was one short of going to T2 automatically.
And he definitely wanted that quick. Right? He couldn't have spent another few moments to build that factory. Another thing is
we do see the first T2 units though coming off. So there's a Fido in the north, as well as a couple of Fidos, I think, in the south of the map as well. You see one right here.
yes,
So
those
walk me
Fidos.
through what the Fidos do.
Well, the Fidos are basically the equivalent of the Pillar. In the Pillar, the Tech 2 unit from UEF, the basic tank in the subcom faction. The Fido basically resembles the stats of a Pillar. So it's a pretty good unit. It's cost effective, and in large numbers you usually can produce them more because they're not so expensive. So they can be pretty efficient against T1 units in large numbers.
Okay, so high HP per mass invested, but not a huge amount of damage then.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. It's like a generic tank just on T2, right? It
Okay.
has its benefits. But what I wanted to point out, since I spent a lot of time with the mod, is one of the basic strengths when you play SCTA versus Supreme Commander faction, is that the SCTA have air engineers that can fly over obstacles, are very fast, almost like an interceptor. Correct me if I'm wrong, maybe even faster, Dragun?
About they're a bit faster than a transport, so they're in between a transport and an inti. So yes.
And what the big strength is, that they can actually reclaim everywhere on the map as fast as regular engines, but because they fly their way faster and more versatile. And I haven't seen TechRock utilize those in this game, but those are one of the main strengths. If you viewers ever play this mod and you wanna destroy your subcom opponent, if you play against some fun matches against your friends, definitely utilize those air NGs and reclaim the whole map.
Well, and that's what
He built like 3.
yeah, well, a couple days ago, whenever you guys saw me play versus Spiky Noob, that was what I did in game 2. Whenever there was a series of islands in the map, I went first air and then spammed out air NGs, but there was a huge amount of energy that was associated with that I did not expect, and ended up power stalling for a good amount of the game, but it all worked out, so I'm gonna count it as a win.
Oh, power. Can you look at one of the TA NGs for me? Probably one that's not building.
An air NG?
See the yield?
Oh, they give power.
Yes. In TA,
That's interesting.
equivalent to engineer units, give power.
Oh, that's cool.
TA
That's
would
all
be like 10.
NGs as well.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just they cost an immense amount of power to produce.
Oh, they
in
do?
comparison.
Yeah.
Well, they cost about as much as an interceptor to produce in terms of power.
6 of them cost the same as 6 NGs on a transport.
Well, not quite
Just
as
be
much
the
as an interceptor, but they have the same drain.
Yeah.
Dragun, I have a
the-
question for you.
Sure. I hope we
It's
have an answer.
So when we look at this SCTA factions, core and arm, right?
Yeah.
I'm interested. What would you say? Is core and arm about the same strength in your current development, or what are the benefits of each of them?
Traditionally, is considered better than core traditionally. I believe, if you force me to answer this question, I believe that core is currently better.
Okay. And that is due to
the climbing cave bots. You have the sud.
okay.
Yeah. They have the thud. Core specifically has a sud unit, which is, so you don't know, is basically like a Vui in context of this game. They also have the storm, which is a very strong K-bot. Core's Core's biggest weakness compared to ARM is with the mod. Both factions do want to get to. You want to get both your vehicle and your K-bots eventually. But ARM can just go mono K-bot and not be that bad off. Where Core really has to go both K-bot and vehicles to get the best of their abilities. Otherwise, ARM does have some nice advantages where they tend to have a lot of cheaper units just in general, because they have a lot of information from the SCTA mechanically speaking. But if you ask me, I would say Core is stronger, purely based on the fact that a lot of where the TA gimmicks come into play, Core has them in more abundance and in stronger quantities.
Okay, yeah, I've played a couple of times against Core. I've played the tournament and a few other show matches before, and I feel like that the Core are very strong in the early game for sure. Most of the time, games on higher levels decide in the early game, especially when you fight one faction against the other or do some team games, and then the advantage just carries over. So I have not really seen the strengths in T2 from any faction, really, because usually there's a big gap. You know what I mean? Like either one player is pretty ahead from the early game because they utilize the tools the right way, or like the game you and Arch played against Tagada and Squall and Arch played against you and Tagada. Remember how Arch Simcats and that army of Suds into Tagada's base? Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's also usually in regular Supreme Commander, right?
Yeah.
You have usually the games last way longer than they actually technically last, right?
Yeah.
So that's why, especially I think, if you play Supreme SCTA faction in the right manner, right, and you did some preparation games, or you kind of did a little bit of research, you should technically destroy the Supreme Commander faction, because you have a lot of different advantages that a Supreme Commander faction cannot bring to the table. If we are at balancing again, right? Remember?
Yeah.
Beginning of the game, balancing. I think it's very, very hard, like you said at the start, to balance this out in any way. But what it's balanced is, we've seen a couple of tournaments that you hosted where it was one Supreme Commander, one faction, and one Supreme Commander faction.
Yeah.
Other faction.
The idea is both factions, you can use like both factions' strengths together in those scenarios.
Yeah, and here actually Tagrock got killed by the T2 army from Nightmare, which we, that I always had the feeling, at least when playing, I know you did a lot of adjustments, but that the commander is also a tiny bit weaker.
I mean, after T1 stage, the commander should not be on the front line.
Yeah.
Like, T1 stage, he should be good. He's basically a gun com if he's powerful D-gun.
So what I think, to wrap this game up, I know we talked a lot about specifics and theories and not necessarily about the game. But if you want to take a quick conclusion to this game, is if you open the reclaim board, Duelist, if you show what is available on the map currently in reclaim, I would say it boils down to Tagrock. Obviously, haven't played that much in the recent days, but not utilizing the reclaim to the full extent, which resulted into a mass lead for Nightmare, which he used in order to win the game in the end.
And just to build on that, you said, Felix, so you don't know, classically in Subcom, you didn't actually reclaim all the thing very early. Pita trivia. Now,
Okay.
there's a reason for that. Not saying I agree with it, I'm just going to explain the reason, okay? Classically speaking, in TA, which a lot of these players come from, tag rock included, you get your reclaim the end of your process, and you get it all in one massive dump. So what would happen is you'd actually do all this reclaim and then overflow your mass.
Okay. So in the original sense, why would you slow down your exponential expansion and growth for a...
You don't have the mass storage for it.
Okay. And there's no if you reclaim something, it's basically it gets reclaimed even though you overflow and doesn't stop or something like that.
Yeah, and it also, yes. And what will happen is when you reclaim something, you get the entire reclaim in one thing. You don't get it over time. You just get everything.
I think that some of it also goes back to the fact that RTS games change over the years. Like if you look at Age of Empires 2, you look at Supreme Commander, you look at Total Annihilation, none of them are played the same way today as they were whenever they were very first released. So back in the early days of Supreme Commander, might not have been meta to rush mid and Se7ens, reclaim all the destroyers, and then overflow the mass to your allies, because that was something that people hadn't thought of yet. And then one guy, Lightbulb, came on, and his team crushed for like 30 games until everybody else figured it out, right?
Yes, definitely. I mean, even I come from StarCraft, the StarCraft universe, right? And if you look at the beginning of StarCraft 10 years ago, and you look at the pro play 10 years ago, and now you look maybe at Silver League or Gold League, which is like a very low league in StarCraft, those players probably play better than the pros back in the day. You know, it's a constant development of skill. So, and I mean, strategy games and, you know, evolve during the time, just like you said.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you scroll into Rock's center base for me real quick? I want to point out something to people here. Actually, go to one of go to his factories. See right there, see all of the NG supporting? That is a very GPGNet era thing. Because in GPGNet era, factory upgrades were very inefficient. So you'd build one factory and assist everything onto it. Which is what Tag Rock is doing here. So I just want to point that out, like back into how the game changes over time, and strategies and stuff. This is a great example of that, and the reclaim that Felix pointed out. Once again, I'm not saying I agree with these old strategies. I'm just saying this is where they come from.
All good call outs. So let's go ahead and move to the second game that we're going to be covering. I believe it's going to be Tag Rock versus Nightmare again, and we'll see you guys in the next replay. Okay, guys, going into the second game. This is going to be played on open palms. We have Tag Rock down on the southern side of the map, Nightmare on the northern side of the map. Contrary to the fact that you see a Se7en icon populating over Tag Rock and a Se7en icon populating over Nightmare, the faction that you actually pick in the lobby has literally no impact on the game. So, zooming in on Tag Rock, he is once again going for the ARM faction, opening with a Kabot lab, and then going for metal extractors or mass extractors. If you want to be more current, his opponent Nightmare in the northern side of the map is opening first land with Se7en, and then grabbing all of the perimeter mass extractors with adjacency on the power generators. I'm once again joined by Dragun and Felix. We have... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, nice to be here. Just want to quickly mention a little bit about the game here. Tag Rock this time has a better build order than last game, which resembles actually a competitive build order, I would say that you would find in most of the Supreme Commander games on this map. In the funny contrary, right, that we have here a Supreme Commander player in Nightmare, is that he actually doesn't do a regular Supreme Commander build order for this map. I think this is more approach safe to first Bomber, but usually you see a quicker Hydro without the 3 extra pigeons that you see in his main base.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe he's scared of like a bomber rush from Tagrock and still wants to get an air factory out pretty quick, because I think that's a first or a second air factory out from him, right?
Yeah, so you guys, those who don't know, TA bombers are overpowered enough, please.
They are.
They are pretty strong.
Spiky beat the shit out of me with them a couple weeks ago.
Yes, and I like the approach from Tagrock that he starts with some solar collectors rather than immediately turning into the better wind turbines. But at the start, it's very crucial that you not suddenly go into negative power just because you get a bad cycle, right?
Well, I mean, as far as like solar versus wind, like solar are a little bit more metal or mass intensive, wind or more energy intensive. So maybe he's a little bit worried about a power stall at the very beginning of the game and wants to go solar instead.
Yes,
It's like it's designed for that.
Yeah, and honestly, I every time I play SCTA faction, I also start with at least a few solar collectors just to get that stable power income. Here we see the bomber in action, and that's
What is
probably
that reload time? That was insane. He picked off an NG right here, and then also carpet bombed the mechs and the power generators. That was insanely fast.
Is to have to reload time with subcoms.
Wow.
Yes, and what we have to also keep in mind here is Se7en has the worst T1 anti-air unit. So even when you play Supreme Commander versus Supreme Commander, if you play against Se7en, often a first bomber gets utilized because the way the anti-air works is, you know, they shoot missiles and they follow, and that delays, and if you micro, you can dodge.
Also, we see the solars got turned off by that bomber.
Oh yeah, that's a good call out. So solar collectors do get shut down by damage, and they close up, and they're not producing energy.
Yes.
So as Felix, as a high-rated player here, so everyone knows classically how Aeon is very weak to T1 bombers, because, you know, Aurora fun times. Would you say Se7en, to some extent, at least in early game, has a similar weakness?
Yeah, I would say that the main weakness in the early game comes from build order, right? And the fact that the anti-air, you know, there's a lot of strategies against Se7en where you just simply start with an air factory first and go bomber first. Because on maps like Open Palms, where you, for example, have a very short rush distance, right? And that means that they have to build an anti-air from the land factory, and it's very hard to use those anti-airs effectively in consideration to other factions. That's basically simply it, I would say. Yeah, meta on this map, you see that the expansion speed is very important because it gives you a lot of mass, because there's a lot of metal extractors on the map. And we see, what we probably will see is that the Supreme Commander player, Nightmare, is gonna move its ACU at some point down to the expansion, to the Formax expansion of Tagrock. That's usually the meta if you play the map correctly.
Yeah, so normally what we would see is Nightmare moving in kind of a counterclockwise position, as well as Tagrock. Tagrock kind of sitting around a little bit with his commander, not expanding to this Formax expansion to the north of his initial base. Now he ends up moving towards it, but sending a lot of his spam and T1 units to the south instead.
So before anyone starts complaining about Tagrock's APM, do note he's like 58 years old.
Wow. That's insane. He's still playing this game at 58. Dude's a freaking
Yes.
legend.
He's enjoying himself.
Salutes in the comments below, guys. Guys, 58 and still playing Supreme Commander. I hope I'm still playing Supreme Commander at 58.
What I want to point out here as well is that the vision that Nightmare is using is pretty awesome. You always see whenever he wants to make a move, he scouts the areas before with air scouts, and that way he makes sure that he doesn't, either doesn't lose his commander, for example, when he walks down there, or that he doesn't have to anticipate a push on the right side because he wants to direct his units to his commander when he pushes. And we see that Tagrock is kind of struggling with that because of that pressure and is falling behind in mass. And he doesn't really know what's going on.
One thing I did want to ask you guys is after my games with Spiky Noob, one of the big assets that at least I felt like was for the Total Annihilation factions was that their fighters can do a ground fire or can fire at units on the ground. What do you guys think about that in terms of balance?
A bad meme.
A bad meme, okay.
I would say it probably is most of the time worse than good.
Okay.
Yes.
Actually, we saw it right there. Tagrock had an advantage of inties. He proceeded to almost lose that air fight because his inties were shooting ground when he thought engaged.
Yes, but now we have to say again, we talked about it last game a tiny bit, that balancing is kind of funny because ARM inties or SCTA inties do splash damage, and basically Nightmare lost the air fight because 2 volleys hit 5 interceptors in one space and they all died at once.
Yeah, I saw that. I was going to ask about that next.
So, again, interceptors of SCTA, please nerf.
Yes. TA Air, North, please.
Yes.
Oh, bad meme time.
Yeah, here we see something very dangerous. Again, I would say a mistake of not scouting, but Tagrock is in a pretty dangerous spot here. If Grimplex realizes, he can
he's definitely realized.
Yeah, okay. He has not enough units yet there, but it definitely stopped the push.
Yep.
But this could have been dangerous. This could have been very dangerous.
Oh, this isn't bad meme time yet.
What I strangely want to point out in the game, because I actually have practiced open palms a lot in the recent weeks, is that nobody grabbed the sides yet. I see Tagrock is building a factory at the top right, actually, so that is an attempt. But again, he has access to those air NGs.
Also, his commander can walk up. Just
Also,
want
his
to point that out.
commander can walk up. So if you play SCTA on this map, you can probably grab a ton of mass. A ton of mass and energy if you want to show them really quick, Duelist, what is basically on reclaim on the sides. You can grab all of that with an air NG or 2, or your commander walking up there and building a factory.
That's actually a great call out, because usually in Supreme Commander you have to build like a transport, load engineers onto it, build a land factory. You know, there's a whole hullabaloo associated with it.
Yes, and I'm surprised that Nightmare actually didn't try yet, because this is one of the big advantages that you want to play out, especially if you're starting to be in a stalemate situation that we kinda see right now, where you want to get that additional mass from the sides in order to be ahead.
Well, and Tagrock grabbing the 4 mexes in the middle though, so as far as overall mass, at least from an extractor standpoint, it looks like he is a little bit ahead from a map control standpoint, but he is behind by 5k or so, 6k on the overall mass generated back behind Grimplex.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what that basically comes to is the amount of reclaim difference. If we see at the bottom left, not left but in the middle, there's an engineer from Nightmare reclaiming a fight, right? And this is what you basically want to do in any regular Supreme Commander game or in TA, you know, in SCTA. You want to reclaim the fights while they're happening, and that gives you the mass advantage.
Yeah, and you know, we talked about last game. You know, back in the day, that was not the meta. But I think for a variety of reasons, that has become the meta for a very good reason.
Yes, and I also want to point out that, you know, the SCTA factions work the best when they have a radar targeting facility, or it's called, what is it called, radar targeting? Because they actually don't shoot on premises immediately if you don't have that. And in the mod, you need to have a T2 radar some sort on the map, which we don't have yet.
Oh, we do not, do we?
No. Neither last game. So the SCTA player TagRock is not using the units to its full potential because they can only shoot on sight.
Yeah. And you know, that's one of the things with, again, quick call out, Felix. Thank you mentioned that, because I completely missed that. Like, Duelist, I think I've been wrong. I feel like TagRock should win this game, but I think he's just not playing very well after like 8 minutes or so. He just stopped.
Yeah, the problem that I see here is that Nightmare is doing the right thing by, you know, don't producing any T1 units anymore. If you look into his main base, he already has 4 T2 mechs. You know, he's grabbing the advantage of T2 eco. Yes, TagRock is also mech ecoing, and his mechs are a little bit more efficient, but Nightmare is also grabbing the reclaim of the fights. Right? So that swings into his favor now. And
well, and even outside of the T2 mexes, he's got what is this, like 5, 6, and 7 T2 support factories outside of his base?
Yeah.
Exactly. And if we compare the reclaim, we have about a 4,000 mass advantage for Nightmare, which we currently have. So maybe more to 3,000, but you know, this mass advantage was created very early in the game and carried, and that means exponential growth in his economy. So currently it's getting a little bit smaller, but the damage was already done.
The other thing I want to mention here too is TagRock is making the Great Walls of China's. Look at his bases. Look at all the PDs he's building.
Oh yeah.
So that's a very TA thing to do, because in TA those PDs are actually very cheap, relatively speaking here.
Okay, here they're very close to the actual subcom.
Yes, because in TA those things cost about 5 tanks, not like 10 or 20. I think they cost 10 in subcom. I forget how much.
You know, I don't know your audience, Duelist, but usually in subcom, it is considered to be a bad move to build too many standing defenses. So,
my audience is very subcom heavy. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Okay. I also don't know about the skill levels. That's why I'm trying to mention it.
Yeah.
Because if you were actually playing, units are more versatile and usually get the job better done than a PD. 1 or 2 PDs in an one PD in a critical expansion like you see on Nightmare's left and right expansion, where he has 1 PD each in the 4 max clump, is a good idea. But if it goes too excessive, oh, and I guess TagRock is dying here before we miss that.
And I said, this is great. This is the bad meme, because he didn't need to die here. He just literally walked into the.
Oh, yeah, that's a very good point. He just got surrounded.
And yeah, I think it's a general idea of scouting, because if you quickly switch into TagRock's perspective and just see how much actually he saw of Nightmare in his main base and what the stage of the game was, you will see that he actually hasn't even confirmed more than 1 factory in the main base, or like 2 in the starter factory, right? So scouting is very important in every strategy game, and I think that's what this game went to in the end.
It also comes down to point defense. Like that was, if you guys have followed my channel for a little bit, that was one of the big things that I struggled with in the RTS Triathlon is that in Bar, which is inspired by Total Annihilation, you build a lot of light laser towers or point defense. And in Supreme Commander, it's very different. You don't build a bunch of point defense because you can have tanks and things like that that move around, and point defense are very expensive relative to the actual vehicle or unit cost. So I think that was a little bit of what we saw here. I'm sorry, yeah, Dragon, didn't mean to cut you off.
I apologize for cutting you off. And you know, the other thing to mention here is, so once again, they're very expensive. TAGROC's coming from playing mostly TA, and that's why he's doing that. It's just my belief anyways. I don't know, I may be completely wrong there, but whatever. Additionally, there's one TA advantages for the subcom is their static defenses often take money to use, or specifically, energy. Their T1, their T2 PDs, their T3 PDs, they're, well, also tough from audio that takes this, but they all take energy to shoot. That laser tower he has, it takes about 20 energy a second to shoot at full power. That's 1 PGen per a light laser tower you have.
Yeah, and also look at the T2 radar from Nightmare in the middle of the map. That basically shows him the whole map.
It's nice adjacency.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome job, I think, from him. Very disappointed though that the sites, right? The sites, disappointment in my heart. Sites have been grabbed way too late and not efficient enough. We see reclaim there. That's usually a big deal on this map.
Yeah.
Hey, well, you know, some games you win, some games you lose, other games you disappoint your casters. Let's move on to the next one.
Yes.
Awesome.
Alrighty, everybody. Welcome back to the third game.
So because I cannot shoot the faction in lobby, rest in peace, drop pods. You instead choose your faction from a drop pod, which basically determines your UI and all that fun stuff. Okay.
And the various players, we've got TAGROC in the northeastern corner this game, and we have actually Harzer99 playing in the southwesterly corner, going Se7en, going first land, and TAGROC is going ARM, opening first Kabat, which would, I guess, be land, sort of. It's like half of land because there's no vehicles. Anyway, Harzer, incidentally, I believe he and Andrani casted the game that I played versus Spiky Noob. And so if you guys haven't seen those casts, go and check those out. I'll be sure to drop those casts in the description down below. I am joined once again by Dragon as well as Se7en, or Felix as he goes by on Discord. You guys want to join back in on the cast?
Yes, so funny trivia to start the game off. The first ever SCTA tournament was won by me and Hearts as a team. Right? So he's a teammate that I played with that tournament. So he's pretty familiar with the mod.
Oh, well, now you have to talk a ton of shit about him, right? Because he was your teammate.
Yes, but actually, you know, since we won, there's not that much shit to talk about. Right?
He's also my clanmate too, just so you guys know.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So yes, he's pretty involved in the community. I think he's probably more known than Nightmare, aka Grimplex, that played before. But yeah, we have TAGROC again, starting this time actually a little bit nicer, I would say, because he gets that second factory up earlier, which I personally prefer as the SCTA faction.
Doing reclaim.
Yeah, also taking reclaim, and this is a special map made for Subcom SCTA mod, right?
Made by Boom or Yeed, as you guys might know him.
Yes, and now we kind of also.
That.
Yes, it was the final of the tournament, of the first SCTA tournament, and this map was specifically created for that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I think that's exactly why I hosted that mapping tournament, was to make this map for SCTA for all of the short matches, because otherwise I kind of don't have that many good options. I have Painted Desert and Cold Place and Comet Catcher.
Yes. So if we take a look now at Tagrock, he did a way better job this time. But if you compare the factory counts already, he had 3 factories up way earlier than the counterpart on the Supreme Commander faction. Right now he also has the 3rd faction, but you see kind of where I'm coming from when I say that you can really utilize that extra mass and build power in the early game if you want to get quicker production up as the faction.
Yeah, absolutely. You also don't see Harzer really taking a lot of this reclaim just until now. Like this is the first engineer we have taking the reclaim in this little L formation right there. Whereas if we look at Tagrock has been taking this reclaim for a good period of time with several of his engineers or construction kabots.
You know it's K-Bot, right? Not like kebab, it's like K-Bot.
Sorry, K-Bot, not kabot.
The funny thing is, even though Tagrock is reclaiming for a while longer, he only is 100 mass ahead. Because those little rocks literally go in the reclaim, if you look at the reclaim. Those small rocks as he's reclaiming are literally not making that much of a difference. And he is more inclined to take that reclaim as SCTA because he's also spending his mass quicker, right? More build power, more spending.
Like it's intentional.
That's
yeah,
why
those are great points.
Yes, that's why Harzer didn't had to take the reclaim yet, right?
And so we've got Harzer moving out with his commander to the northern part of this kind of central pond, and then Tagrock doing the same with his commander on the very south. Getting a little bit into it here with some T1 units. Nothing to cry about, though.
We look at expansion speed. Harzer is expanding much more rapidly into every direction.
Well, I'm looking at this Mantis and the Mole going around the north of the map. That's really cutting off a lot of Tagrock's expansion.
Yeah, funny trivia. So, remember how you mentioned radar targeting last game?
Yes.
If that Mole cloaks, it walks into Tagrock's space, none of his units will shoot it automatically.
That's funny. That's actually a funny fact. But I'm actually amazed that I see air engineers from Tagrock. Those are the first air engineers I've but he uses them to build.
A missile tower.
So do know missile tower is actually very cheap in this mod. It's only double or triple the cost of an energy of a tank, which traditionally in subcom is like 6 to 10 times the cost.
I still want him to reclaim with those.
I do too. I want to mention it's not as bad as the later towers are.
Yeah. Another fun thing is we actually have a 2.9 KD kill to death ratio on Tagrock right now. He's actually trading pretty efficiently, which comes to mind. Warriors are pretty strong, especially against Mantis.
Warriors are actually better Mantis, for those who don't know.
Yes, so we have a stronger matchup here. The bomber of Harzer is doing some work though. On the right side, he already killed 100 mass, and there's a few NGs that he can kill if he's paying attention. Yeah, Harzer's taking some bad trades in the middle. But we actually see some Stumpies here. And personally, I don't even have an idea how good they are.
They're better strikers.
Oh, better strikers even. Okay. Well, that game is supposed to be difficult for Harzer, but we see Harzer with a very aggressive ACU movement here, right? You can probably debate if that is smart or not, especially since he literally has probably 2 units that are close to his ACU.
I would argue that it's pretty bad. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
The thing is, so if you usually talk about Supreme Commander, right? You say, you know, an ACU without overcharge can probably take out 20 tanks, right? And from Harzer's perspective and scouting, I saw he's sending some land scouts around. there are no 20 units in the area right now. So by him taking those 3 mechs and going back, if he's actually going back now, which he is not, would have not been too bad. But overstaying your welcome is a little bit dangerous, like you
Yep,
said.
we got 17 warrior bots though.
17
And a
warrior
commander.
bots plus the commander. That is
And the
usually
com.
enough.
Yep.
That is usually enough.
This could be
And-
real bad here for Harzer 99.
And we'll see turn on overcharge here, I think. Turn on D-gun. Yep, D-gun. Here comes D-gun.
Oh,
Come on,
D-gun
D-gun.
is the commander killer if we use this.
Ooh,
Yeah, there he
baby.
goes. Yeah, a D-gun, a fully powered D-gun on a TA commander is just as good, is only slightly worse than a gun commander.
But I would honestly say, even though we have a D-gun here, I don't think that would have made a difference.
I mean, yeah.
That was just Harzer overstaying his welcome, and we have the first win for Tag Rock in the series here against Harzer. Our 58-year-old veteran is finally getting a game.